Picture this: a piece of clay, baked hard by time, etched with strange symbols that no living person can completely understand. These marks aren't random scratches. They're the handwriting of people who walked the earth thousands of years before us. Their thoughts frozen in symbols we're still struggling to read. It's like holding a message from another world, one where the voices have gone silent, leaving behind only cryptic clues to their lives, their dreams, their secrets. That's the power of the world's oldest scripts, languages like cuneiform pressed into Mesopotamian clay, or the swirling symbols of Linear A carved into Cretan tablets. They're not just writing, they're time capsules, waiting for someone to crack their code and let the past speak again. Why do these ancient scripts still baffle historians today? Think about it. We've sent probes into deep space, built machines that can learn, even decoded the human genome. And yet, some of the earliest writing systems ever invented remain just out of reach, teasing us with glimpses of lost knowledge. Part of the challenge is the sheer weight of time. Languages evolve, cultures vanish, and without a living tradition to guide us, deciphering these scripts becomes a puzzle with missing pieces. Take the Indus Valley script, for example. Thousands of inscriptions survive, but without a bilingual text or a clear descendant language, its meaning stays locked away. It's like trying to solve a crossword where half the clues have faded to nothing. But here's what makes this journey so thrilling: every cracked script rewrites history. When scholars finally decoded Egyptian hieroglyphs using the Rosetta Stone, it wasn't just about reading words, it was about resurrecting an entire civilization's voice. Suddenly, we could hear the boasts of pharaohs, the prayers of priests, the everyday complaints of farmers. That's the promise hidden in these undeciphered scripts. Imagine what we might learn if we could read Linear A. Would it reveal the true story of the Minoans? Or what if we unlocked Proto-Elamite? Could it rewrite the history of trade and empire in ancient Persia? This isn't just academic curiosity. It's about reclaiming chapters of the human story that we didn't even know were missing. So let's travel back through layers of dust and centuries of silence to meet the puzzle solvers who are piecing together history's greatest mysteries, one symbol at a time. The story of writing begins not with poetry or grand proclamations, but with something far more practical: counting grain. In the Fertile Crescent of ancient Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers nourished the world's first cities, people faced a problem: how to keep track of who owed what. Around 5,000 years ago, they started pressing reeds into soft clay to make simple marks: a wedge for a bushel of barley, a circle for a flock of sheep. At first, these were straightforward pictographs, little pictures of the things they represented. But as trade grew more complex, so did the symbols. A drawing of a head could mean just that, or it could stand for the idea of eating when combined with another sign. Over centuries, these crude impressions evolved into cuneiform, the first true writing system, where symbols represented not just objects but sounds, ideas, even abstract concepts. Meanwhile, along the Nile, Egyptian scribes were carving hieroglyphs into temple walls, but their system took a different path. Where cuneiform streamlined into abstract wedges, hieroglyphs kept their artistic flair, blending pictures of birds, snakes, and everyday objects with a sophisticated mix of logograms and phonetic signs. What's fascinating is that both civilizations, separated by hundreds of miles, arrived at writing independently around the same time. It wasn't some happy accident. It was the inevitable result of societies reaching a critical mass of trade, governance, and shared knowledge. When you have a city with thousands of mouths to feed, taxes to collect and goods to distribute, memory alone isn't enough. You need records permanent, precise, and undeniable. Yet for all we know about these early scripts, mysteries linger. Take the Proto-Cuneiform Tablets from Uruk, the world's oldest known written documents. Some contain lists of workers, of livestock, of goods, but others seem to be early attempts at literature or law. Were they experimenting with storytelling even then? Or consider the earliest Egyptian hieroglyphs, which appear suddenly, almost fully formed. Did they borrow ideas from Mesopotamia, or did they invent their system in isolation? The gaps in the archaeological record leave room for theories, even controversies. What's clear is that once writing took root, it spread like wildfire, revolutionizing how humans think, remember, and communicate. It's no exaggeration to say these scratches in clay and stone set the stage for everything that followed: the rise of empires, the birth of philosophy, even the way you're watching this video today. Writing didn't just record history, it made history possible. Cuneiform wasn't just a tool, it was a revolution pressed into clay. Picture a scribe in ancient Sumer, hunched over a damp tablet, using a reed stylus to press wedge after wedge, each mark carrying the weight of human thought. What began as straightforward accounting tallies of grain, records of livestock, soon blossomed into something extraordinary. Those same wedges could capture the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of humanity's oldest surviving stories, or the precise measurements of a temple's construction. The genius of cuneiform lay in its adaptability. Over time, those early pictographs simplified into abstract symbols, capable of representing not just objects but syllables, sounds, even grammatical rules. A single sign might stand for water, the sound A, or even act as a silent indicator to clarify meaning. This wasn't just writing, it was a living system, evolving with the needs of the people who used it. Yet for all its sophistication, cuneiform poses a unique challenge to modern scholars. Unlike the Rosetta Stone, which gave us a clear key to Egyptian hieroglyphs, no such bilingual treasure exists for many cuneiform texts. Compounding the difficulty, the script was used to write multiple languages: Sumerian, Akkadian, Hittite, each with its own quirks and complexities. Imagine trying to decode a document where the same symbol might mean one thing in Sumerian and something entirely different in Akkadian. It's like stumbling upon a library where every book is written in a mix of Latin, French, and Old English, with no dictionary to guide you, and the sheer volume of material is staggering. Hundreds of thousands of cuneiform tablets have been unearthed, from royal decrees to schoolboy exercises. Some contain mundane inventories, while others preserve treaties between empires or hymns to forgotten gods. But here's the tantalizing part: only a fraction have been fully translated. What might we learn from the rest? Could there be lost laws that reshaped societies, or scientific observations predating known discoveries? One tablet, for instance, describes a flood story eerily similar to Noah's Ark, written centuries before the Bible. Others reveal advanced mathematical calculations, tracking the movements of planets with surprising accuracy. The real magic of cuneiform, though, lies in its humanity. Amidst the grand proclamations and bureaucratic records, we find glimpses of everyday life: a merchant's complaint about late payments, a student's scribbled mistakes, even what might be the world's oldest known joke. These weren't just symbols on clay, they were voices. And with every tablet deciphered, we reclaim another piece of a world that once was, a world that, thanks to those wedge-shaped marks, refuses to stay silent. Egyptian hieroglyphs might look like a gallery of tiny paintings, birds, snakes, suns, but they're far more than decorative symbols. This was a writing system of astonishing complexity, where a single image could wear multiple hats. A hieroglyph of an owl might represent the actual bird, the sound of the letter M, or even a divine concept in the right context. What made hieroglyphs truly revolutionary was their versatility. They blended logograms, which stood for whole words or ideas, with phonetic signs that captured sounds, much like modern alphabets do. And then there were determinatives, silent symbols that clarified meaning, like visual punctuation marks. Imagine trying to read a sentence where every third word came with an emoji hinting at its interpretation. That's how hieroglyphs worked, layering meaning upon meaning. The Rosetta Stone famously became the key to unlocking this system, thanks to its parallel texts in Greek, Demotic, and hieroglyphs. But here's what most people don't realize: the stone didn't solve everything. Earlier inscriptions, especially those from the Old Kingdom, still hold puzzles. Some hieroglyphs from the pyramids of Giza, for instance, appear only once in surviving texts, ghost symbols with no clear modern equivalent. And then there's the Proto-Canaanite script found scratched onto rocks in the Sinai Peninsula. These crude, early symbols, dating back nearly 4,000 years, seem to bridge hieroglyphs and the first alphabets. Were they the work of Egyptian miners adapting hieroglyphs into something simpler, or evidence of a cultural exchange we've yet to fully understand? What's often overlooked is how deeply hieroglyphs seeped into other writing systems. The Phoenician alphabet, ancestor to Greek and Latin scripts, likely borrowed ideas from Egyptian symbols. That owl hieroglyph, some scholars argue it evolved into the letter M in early alphabets, its shape simplifying over centuries, but the real intrigue lies in the gaps. Temple inscriptions sometimes reference hidden knowledge, recorded in sacred texts that may have been lost to time. Could undiscovered papyri hold advanced mathematical concepts or medical knowledge? The Edwin Smith Papyrus, for example, proves ancient Egyptians practiced sophisticated surgery. What else might their writings reveal if we found the right key? Hieroglyphs weren't just a way to record history, they were a tool to shape reality. Priests believed writing the name of a thing could summon its essence, which is why some pharaohs' names were chiseled away, erasing them from existence. This blend of practicality and mysticism makes deciphering hieroglyphs more than academic. Every translated line pulls back the curtain on a civilization that saw writing as magic, history, and bureaucracy all at once. And with untapped scripts still waiting in tombs or buried ruins, who knows what voices from the past might yet speak again? Deep in the ruins of Minoan palaces on Crete, buried under layers of volcanic ash and time, lie clay tablets marked with strange, looping symbols. Linear A, one of history's most stubborn puzzles. These inscriptions, dating back nearly 4,000 years, taunt us with their elegant curves and cryptic arrangements. Unlike Linear B, which was deciphered in the 1950s to reveal an early form of Greek, Linear A refuses to give up its secrets. The symbols are clear enough. They follow patterns, repeat in logical sequences, even include what look like numbers and accounting notations. But without knowing the language they represent, it's like listening to a song where you recognize the melody but can't understand a single word. What makes Linear A so frustrating and so fascinating is how close we've come to cracking it, only to hit a wall. We know it was used by the Minoans, that sophisticated Bronze Age civilization known for its sprawling palaces and vibrant frescoes. The tablets themselves are mostly administrative records, listing quantities of goods, distributions of food, or offerings to deities. But here's the catch: the words don't match any known language. Some scholars argue it could be a precursor to Greek, while others suggest links to ancient Anatolian tongues or even a lost language isolate, unrelated to anything else. Without a bilingual text, a Minoan Rosetta Stone, we're left guessing. Imagine finding a grocery list where every item is written in code, and no one remembers what the code stood for. The mystery deepens when you consider how linear evolved. Some of its symbols were borrowed to create Linear B, the script used by later Mycenaean Greeks. It's as if someone took half the alphabet and repurposed it for a completely different language. This borrowing makes decipherment even trickier, like trying to read Spanish while someone's whispering French pronunciations in your ear. And then there are the oddities signs that appear only in religious contexts, or symbols that might represent place names now lost to history. One tablet from the site of Hajar, for instance, shows a repeated symbol that could mean honey or offering, but without context, it's pure speculation. Yet there's hope. New technologies like artificial intelligence are being trained to spot patterns humans might miss. Archaeologists keep unearthing more tablets, and who knows, one might yet bear a crucial clue. The real prize wouldn't just be translating lists of olive oil and sheep. It would be hearing the Minoans speak for the first time in millennia, understanding their myths, their laws, their everyday worries. Linear A isn't just a script, it's a locked door, and behind it lies an entire civilization waiting to tell its story. Until then, those silent symbols remain a reminder of how much history is still out there, whispering just beyond our grasp. Among all the undeciphered scripts of the ancient world, none taunt historians quite like the symbols of the Indus Valley civilization. Picture tiny, intricate carvings, a unicorn-like creature here, a row of stick figure trees there, etched onto soapstone seals no bigger than a postage stamp. These artifacts, scattered across what's now Pakistan and northwest India, bear witness to a sophisticated urban culture that thrived over 4,000 years ago. But unlike their contemporaries in Mesopotamia and Egypt, the people of the Indus Valley left behind a script that refuses to surrender its secrets. The challenge starts with the script's frustrating brevity. Most inscriptions contain fewer than 5 symbols, with the longest stretching to just 26. Imagine trying to crack a language where every message is the length of a tweet without knowing the language itself. Compounding the mystery, there's no Rosetta Stone equivalent, no bilingual text to bridge the gap between ancient symbols and modern understanding. Even the direction of writing is debated. Do the symbols flow right to left, left to right, or even alternate like a plow turning rows in a field? Without longer texts or grammatical patterns, scholars are left chasing shadows. Then there's the fundamental question: is this even full writing? Some argue these symbols are mere proto-writing, a system of clan marks or merchant signatures rather than true literature or law. Others point to the script's consistency across hundreds of miles, suggesting a standardized system capable of complex expression. The seals themselves add another layer of intrigue. Many depict animals, bulls, elephants, mythical beasts alongside the script. Were these early trademarks, religious talismans, or something else entirely? One particularly haunting seal shows a cross-legged figure surrounded by animals, dubbed the Proto-Shiva for its resemblance to the later Hindu god. But without context, it's impossible to say if this was a deity, a ruler, or a symbolic scene. New technologies offer glimmers of hope. Computational analysis has revealed the script may encode a spoken language with patterns resembling known linguistic structures. Yet even with advanced algorithms, the absence of a linguistic relative, a known ancestor or descendant language, leaves researchers without a starting point. The Indus Valley script is like a locked door with no keyhole, no hinges, and no clues about what might lie on the other side. What's at stake isn't just academic pride. Deciphering these symbols could rewrite our understanding of one of humanity's first urban experiments. Were the Indus cities egalitarian marvels, as some archaeologists suggest? Did they trade ideas with Mesopotamia or develop unique philosophies lost to time? For now, the script remains a silent sentinel, guarding stories we may never hear unless one day, against all odds, someone finds the missing key. Far out in the Pacific, on the most isolated inhabited island on Earth, lies a puzzle carved in wood Rongo-Rongo, the enigmatic script of Easter Island. Picture slender wooden tablets, some as long as your arm, covered in rows of tiny, precise glyphs. Birds with curved beaks, crouching human figures, palm fronds, even strange geometric shapes, all arranged in alternating lines that zigzag like a snake's path. These aren't random doodles, they're the remnants of a writing system that blossomed in complete isolation, untouched by the scribes of Mesopotamia or the hieroglyph carvers of Egypt. Rongo-Rongo stands as one of humanity's rarest achievements, a script invented from scratch with no outside inspiration. And yet, by the time Europeans arrived in the 18th century, the knowledge of how to read it was already slipping away, leaving us with tantalizing fragments of a lost intellectual tradition. What makes Rongo-Rongo so baffling isn't just its unfamiliar symbols, it's the way they're arranged. Unlike most writing systems, which flow left to right or top to bottom, Rongo-Rongo uses a system called reverse boustrophedon. Imagine a farmer plowing a field, turning at the end of each row. The first line reads left to right, the second right to left, with the glyphs themselves flipped to face the new direction. This intricate dance of symbols suggests a sophisticated, deliberate system, not mere picture writing. Some glyphs reappear in consistent sequences, hinting at phonetic values or grammatical rules. Others seem to tell miniature stories: a bird perched on a hand, a canoe with rowers, a figure holding what might be a weapon or a tool. But without a living tradition to explain them, these scenes remain frozen in ambiguity. The tragedy of Rongo-Rongo is how close we came to understanding it, and how violently that chance was lost. When European missionaries arrived on Easter Island in the 1860s, they recorded that local elders could still chant the tablets, suggesting the glyphs served as prompts for oral recitation. But within decades, slave raids, disease, and cultural suppression had shattered the island's knowledge keepers. By the time scholars took serious interest, only a handful of weathered tablets remained, and no one could fully explain them. A few brave attempts at decipherment have been made, linking glyphs to genealogies or lunar calendars, but none have gained universal acceptance. The closest we've come is recognizing that certain sequences may relate to the island's Birdman cult or mythic creation stories, yet even these connections are speculative. Perhaps the greatest mystery is why Rongo-Rongo existed at all. Easter Island society had no sprawling bureaucracy, no vast trade networks requiring records. Was it used for sacred chants, royal proclamations, or perhaps navigational knowledge passed down from the Polynesian ancestors who settled the island? The glyphs themselves offer cryptic clues. One recurring symbol shows a frigatebird, a creature central to the island's rituals. Another resembles the sweet potato, a staple crop. Could these have been mnemonics for agricultural cycles or religious ceremonies? Or were they true writing, capable of capturing complex ideas? The answer might lie in the island's other great puzzle, its massive stone moai statues. Some scholars suggest the tablets and the statues are two halves of a single cultural system, one speaking in stone, the other in wood. But until we crack the code, Rongo-Rongo remains a silent testament to human ingenuity and to how much can be lost when a civilization's voice is silenced too soon. Buried in the dusty ruins of ancient Susa, in what's now southwestern Iran, lie clay tablets marked with some of the most perplexing symbols ever pressed into earth. Proto-Elamite. a script that emerged around the same time as cuneiform but took a radically different path. At first glance, the tablets look almost Mesopotamian with their grid-like impressions and careful columns, but look closer and the differences leap out. Where cuneiform used wedge-shaped marks, Proto-Elamite symbols are more fluid curves, slashes, and dots arranged in ways that feel almost mathematical. Some signs resemble early cuneiform, as if the scribes were borrowing ideas from their neighbors but refusing to follow the rules. Others are utterly unique, abstract to the point of mystery. This wasn't just writing, it was a cultural statement, a declaration that the people of ancient Elam would do things their own way. Yet for all its boldness, Proto-Elamite remains a script without a voice. The language it represents, whether an early form of Elamite or something else entirely, has left no clear descendants. Without a bilingual text or a known linguistic relative, decipherment becomes a game of shadows. Imagine trying to assemble a jigsaw puzzle where half the pieces belong to a different box, and no one's sure what the final picture should look like. Compounding the challenge, most of the surviving tablets are dry economic records, lists of grain, livestock, or textiles offering little narrative context. It's like finding a stack of faded receipts and being asked to reconstruct an entire civilization's poetry from them. What's especially puzzling is how abruptly Proto-Elamite vanished. After flourishing for just a few centuries, the script simply disappeared, replaced by a simpler, linear Elamite system. Why abandon a writing system so soon after inventing it? Some scholars point to practicality. Proto-Elamite's complex numerical notation may have been too cumbersome for daily use. Others suspect political upheaval disrupted the scribal traditions that kept the script alive. But the most tantalizing theory suggests the script was always elite knowledge, a tool for temple and palace accountants, never meant for broader communication. When those power structures shifted, the script died with them, leaving behind cryptic fragments of a system we're only beginning to appreciate. Hidden in those fragments, though, are clues to a vibrant, interconnected world. Proto-Elamite tablets reveal trade networks stretching from the Indus Valley to Mesopotamia, with precise records of copper, timber, and precious stones. One tablet might list 6 units of lapis lazuli, hinting at routes that brought Afghan gems to Iranian workshops. Another details rations for workers, offering glimpses of labor divisions and social hierarchies. Even the script's numerical system tells a story. Its base 10 calculations differ from Mesopotamia's base 60, suggesting independent innovation. These aren't just accounting tools, they're windows into how an ancient society measured, valued, and organized its world. The greatest tragedy of Proto-Elamite is how close we've come to breakthroughs that slip away. In 2020, researchers using advanced imaging techniques discovered previously invisible markings on tablets, faint traces of scribble corrections or annotations. Could these ghostly impressions hold the key to syntax or grammar? Meanwhile, statistical analysis of sign patterns suggests the script may encode a linguistic structure unlike any known language from the region. Every new discovery feels like turning a corner, only to find the path ahead still shrouded in mist. What's at stake isn't just solving a puzzle, it's reclaiming an entire chapter of human ingenuity. If we could read Proto-Elamite, we might hear the voices of merchants negotiating across mountain passes, or priests tracking temple wealth, or artisans signing their works. We might learn why this script, born in the same ferment of early civilization as cuneiform and hieroglyphs, chose such a different path, and why it vanished so soon. For now, those silent tablets wait, holding secrets from the dawn of writing itself, reminding us that every mark left by human hands is a message cast into the future, waiting for someone to understand. Imagine holding a cracked turtle shell, darkened by fire and etched with angular symbols that look almost like modern Chinese characters, but not quite. These are oracle bones, the oldest known writing from China, dating back over 3,000 years to the Shang dynasty. Unlike the flowing lines of later calligraphy, these early glyphs are sharp and spare, carved with ritual precision into bone and shell before being heated until they crack. Those cracks weren't accidents. They were messages from the gods, interpreted by diviners to guide kings on everything from harvests to warfare. But what's truly astonishing isn't just the practice, it's how much these fragments reveal about a civilization's first steps toward written language. The oracle bone script isn't just ancient, it's a living bridge to modern Chinese writing. Many characters are recognizable ancestors of today's Hanzi, like a faded family resemblance. The symbol for rain, for example, appears as a row of vertical strokes beneath a horizontal line, a stylized depiction of falling water that still echoes in the modern character. Others are more cryptic, depicting animals, tools, or abstract concepts lost to time. What's remarkable is how sophisticated the system already was. These weren't primitive doodles, they included phonetic elements where symbols represented sounds and complex combinations that hinted at grammar. It's as if the Shang scribes were refining their script in real time, adapting it to capture not just objects but ideas, names, even emotions. Yet for all we've decoded, the oracle bones still guard secrets. Around half the known glyphs remain untranslated, their meanings obscured by time. Some may represent forgotten words or regional dialects that vanished without a trace. Others could be specialized terms for rituals or titles, like finding a medieval manuscript filled with Latin church terminology no one uses today. Even the deciphered texts tease us with gaps. One bone might record a king asking the gods whether it would rain, but not the answer he received. Another lists a royal headache as an omen, but not the remedy prescribed. These fragments are like overhearing half a conversation, leaving us to guess at the rest. The real treasure, though, lies in the glimpses of Shang society these bones accidentally preserve. Between divinations, we catch details of royal hunts, border skirmishes, even complaints about toothaches. One inscription worries about a queen's childbirth, another frets over a noble's recurring nightmares. There are records of celestial events, solar eclipses, comets, that modern astronomers can pinpoint to exact dates, turning these bones into historical anchors. And then there are the darker notes, sacrifices of prisoners, pleas to ancestors for victory in battle, lists of tributes paid in human lives. The oracle bones don't just document a civilization's language, they expose its fears, ambitions, and unshakable belief that writing could bridge the human and divine. What might we still learn from the undiscovered troves? Archaeologists estimate that only a fraction of oracle bones have been excavated, with thousands likely still buried near the Shang capital of Yin. New finds could reshape our understanding of early Chinese governance, trade, or even mythology. Imagine uncovering a bone that preserves a lost creation myth or a treaty with a neighboring kingdom. Or consider the tantalizing possibility of older inscriptions. What if someone unearths a precursor script, showing how the symbols evolved before they hardened into the oracle bone forms? Every unearthed fragment is a chance to hear the Shang speak again, not as distant legends but as people who laughed, feared, and sought answers in the cracks of a turtle shell. Until then, these ancient divinations remain a testament to humanity's endless drive to make marks that outlast us, to carve our questions into bone and hope the future will understand. In a dimly lit library at Yale University rests a book unlike any other, the Voynich manuscript, a 200-page mystery penned in a script no one can read, filled with illustrations of plants that don't exist and celestial diagrams that defy explanation. Discovered in 1912 by a Polish book dealer, this medieval enigma has resisted over a century of relentless scrutiny from linguists, cryptographers, and even wartime codebreakers. At first glance, the text flows with the rhythm of a real language, its curling letters arranged in neat paragraphs that suggest grammar and meaning. But look closer and the certainty crumbles. The alphabet bears no relation to any known writing system, and the words follow patterns just strange enough to feel intentional yet impossible to parse. Is it an elaborate cipher hiding alchemical secrets, a constructed language from a forgotten mystic, or perhaps history's most sophisticated prank? The illustrations only deepen the puzzle. Vibrant but unsettling, they depict flora with twisted roots and bulbous leaves, species unrecognizable to any botanist. One section overflows with naked women bathing in green-tinted pools, their bodies connected by intricate tubes resembling veins or vines. Elsewhere, astrological charts map unknown constellations, their symbols overlapping in ways that make astronomers frown. These aren't the doodles of a madman, they're too precise, too systematic. Yet they refuse to align with any known scientific or occult tradition from the manuscript's estimated 15th century origins. Even the paint tells a story. Analysis reveals pigments consistent with medieval Europe, ruling out modern forgery. Whoever created this book invested staggering time and skill, raising the haunting question: why craft something so meticulous only to make it incomprehensible? Modern technology has sharpened the tools we bring to this ancient riddle, but clarity remains elusive. In 2017, a team applied artificial intelligence trained on hundreds of languages to analyze the manuscript structure. The algorithm detected patterns resembling natural speech, particularly Hebrew and Arabic, yet attempts to translate it using those languages hit dead ends. Some theorists propose its steganography, where meaningful text hides beneath surface gibberish. Others argue it's glossolalia, the automatic writing of spiritual trances. Then there's the hoax hypothesis. Might a clever medieval scribe have concocted nonsense to sell as exotic wisdom to a wealthy patron? The debate rages because the evidence cuts both ways. Statistical analysis shows word frequencies matching real languages, but no one has found a single verifiable word boundary or grammatical marker. What's at stake isn't just solving a puzzle, it's confronting the limits of our understanding. If the Voynich manuscript is a code, cracking it could reveal lost scientific knowledge or heretical beliefs someone risked everything to conceal. If it's a language, its isolation challenges our models of how writing develops. And if it's artful deception, it forces us to ask why humans create mysteries we never intend to solve. Every failed decipherment whispers the same lesson. Some secrets are written not to be shared, but to remind us how much wonder still lingers at the edges of the known world. Until the day someone finds the key, if it exists at all, the Voynich manuscript remains a mirror, reflecting back our ceaseless curiosity and the tantalizing gaps in our grasp of history's hidden voices. Every great decipherment starts with a spark, a single clue that cracks open a door sealed for centuries. For Egyptian hieroglyphs, that spark came in 1799, when French soldiers digging near Rosetta uncovered a slab of black basalt inscribed with the same decree in 3 scripts: Greek, Demotic, and hieroglyphs. The Rosetta Stone wasn't just a translation aid, it was a linguistic time machine. Greek, already understood, provided the key to Demotic, a later Egyptian script, which in turn became the bridge to hieroglyphs. But here's what's often overlooked: the stone didn't solve the puzzle outright. It took Jean-François Champollion, a linguistic prodigy fluent in Coptic, the last living descendant of ancient Egyptian, to realize hieroglyphs weren't purely symbolic. Some signs represented sounds like an alphabet, while others stood for whole words or ideas. His breakthrough, recognizing that the oval cartouches encircling certain glyphs preserved the names of pharaohs, like Ptolemy and Cleopatra, spelled out phonetically. Suddenly, a script considered mystical and opaque became readable, flooding the modern world with voices from ancient Thebes and Memphis. Linear B's decipherment played out like a detective novel with an even more unlikely hero. In the early 1900s, archaeologist Arthur Evans uncovered thousands of clay tablets at Knossos on Crete, inscribed with a script he named Linear B. For decades, scholars assumed it encoded the language of the Minoans, a civilization predating the Greeks. Then came Michael Ventris, an architect with a wartime background in codebreaking and a passion for ancient scripts. Ventris noticed something others had missed: Linear B's symbols grouped in ways that suggested place names like Knossos and Amnisos. Applying statistical analysis counting how often certain signs appeared together, he hypothesized the language wasn't Minoan at all, but an early form of Greek. The proof arrived in 1952, when Ventris deciphered a tablet listing tripods and vessels with the Greek word for total at the bottom. Overnight, Linear B rewrote history, revealing that Mycenaean Greeks had occupied Crete centuries earlier than believed, their bureaucratic records preserving the earliest known form of the Greek language. Why do some scripts surrender their secrets while others, like Linear or the Indus Valley script, resist? The answer lies in three factors: luck, linguistic breadcrumbs, and the nature of the language itself. Bilingual texts like the Rosetta Stone are rare gifts, offering a direct path to translation. Without them, decipherers rely on patterns repetitions that hint at grammar, or symbols that cluster like numbers or titles. Linear B yielded partly because it encoded Greek, a language with known descendants, but scripts tied to isolated or extinct languages like Proto-Elamite leave no such footholds. Even the length of inscriptions matters. The Indus Valley's brief seal markings provide too little data, while Rongo-Rongo's longer texts lack a living tradition to explain them. The real magic of decipherment isn't just reading words, it's the ripple effect through history. When Champollion cracked hieroglyphs, he didn't just translate texts, he resurrected Egyptian medicine, poetry, and legal codes. Ventris's work on Linear B exposed a Mycenaean world of palace economies and sacred offerings, proving Greek civilization stretched back further than anyone knew. Each solved script is a spotlight sweeping across the dark corners of history, illuminating not just kings and battles but the daily rhythms of bakers, sailors, and scribes. And for the scripts still silent, they remind us that every deciphered text was once considered impossible until someone, somewhere, found the key. Bilingual inscriptions are the golden keys to lost languages, turning indecipherable symbols into open books. The Rosetta Stone didn't just provide a translation, it revealed an entire linguistic logic. By comparing the Greek text to the hieroglyphs, scholars realized Egyptian writing wasn't purely pictorial. Some symbols stood for sounds, some for whole words, and others acted as clarifiers. This three-tiered system became the blueprint for cracking other scripts. But here's the catch: such bilingual treasures are vanishingly rare. For every Rosetta Stone, there are dozens of scripts like Linear or Rongo-Rongo, stranded without a linguistic anchor. Consider the Behistun inscription carved into a cliffside in western Iran. Like the Rosetta Stone, it repeats the same proclamation in three languages: Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian. This trilingual masterpiece became the key to unlocking cuneiform, much as the Rosetta Stone did for hieroglyphs. But what happens when no such inscription exists? Take the Indus Valley script, short, cryptic, and entirely isolated. Without a bilingual text, decipherment becomes a game of educated guesses. Scholars can analyze symbol frequencies or compare them to later scripts, but without a known language to tether them to, the symbols remain silent. The hunt for these linguistic bridges is never just about translation, it's about context. A bilingual text doesn't just give us words, it reveals how people thought. The Rosetta Stone's decree about tax exemptions for temples exposed Ptolemaic Egypt's bureaucratic tensions. The Behistun inscriptions boast of royal victories laid bare the propaganda of the Persian Empire. Without these, we're left with half-told stories. Imagine if the only surviving English text was a grocery list. Future scholars might decode milk and bread, but they'd miss Shakespeare, Newton's laws, or the Declaration of Independence. Hope isn't lost, though. New discoveries constantly rewrite the rules. In 2022, archaeologists in Turkey unearthed a tablet with Luwian hieroglyphs alongside Hittite cuneiform, a potential Rosetta Stone for Anatolian scripts. Meanwhile, AI tools scour untranslated texts for patterns, flagging potential bilingual matches humans might miss. The dream, finding a tablet buried alongside Mycenaean Greek, or a Rongo-Rongo chant recorded by a missionary with translations. Until then, every undeciphered script is a locked door, and somewhere out there, a key is waiting to be found. What's at stake isn't just academic bragging rights. Decipherment reshapes history. Before Linear B was cracked, the Minoans were seen as peaceful, artistic mystics. The translated tablets revealed a world of palace bureaucracies and military logistics. If we could read Proto-Elamite, might we discover trade networks stretching further than we imagined? Or if Rongo-Rongo yielded its secrets, could it rewrite the story of Polynesian navigation? Bilingual texts don't just translate words, they resurrect worlds. And for the script still in shadows, that resurrection hangs on the slimmest of chances. A single inscription, buried in the right place, waiting for the right eyes to see it. Computers have become the 21st century's Rosetta Stone, armed not with chisels but algorithms, scanning ancient symbols with a patience no human could match. Where scholars once squinted at clay tablets for decades, machine learning now processes thousands of inscriptions in seconds, spotting patterns invisible to the naked eye. Take the Indus Valley script. Researchers fed an AI over 4,000 seal images, training it to detect subtle clusters of symbols that might represent names or titles. The results were tantalizing. Certain glyphs appeared together in ways that mirrored linguistic structures in known languages, hinting that these markings weren't just random pictographs but a true writing system. Yet the mystery endures. Without a bilingual text to anchor the translations, even the smartest algorithms can only guess at meanings, like eavesdropping on a conversation in a room with no door. The real power of AI lies in its ability to test theories at scale. For decades, historians debated whether Rongo-Rongo, Easter Island's enigmatic script, was truly writing or just ceremonial notation. Then came neural networks trained on hundreds of world languages, analyzing the script's symbol sequences for statistical fingerprints of grammar. The findings: Rongo-Rongo's patterns align closely with natural language, suggesting it's far more than decorative. But here's the catch: AI can tell us how something was written, not necessarily what it means. Like handing a detective 1,000 shredded documents and saying, "These were important, good luck reassembling the sentences." Some breakthroughs emerge from unexpected collaborations. In 2021, a team applied astrophysics algorithms originally designed to map star clusters to Proto-Elamite tablets, revealing previously unnoticed numerical notations hidden in the script's labyrinth of curves. Elsewhere, three-dimensional scanning has resurrected faded inscriptions on crumbling papyrus or weathered stone, pulling vanished ink back into visibility. One project even used facial recognition software to track how glyph shapes evolved across centuries, proving that symbols we once thought were separate might actually be the same sign, slowly morphing over time like a visual game of telephone. Yet for all their brilliance, machines still lack the human spark of intuition. When Michael Ventris cracked Linear B, it wasn't just pattern recognition. It was a flash of insight connecting place names to a linguistic hunch. AI can generate 1,000 plausible translations for a Minoan tablet, but it can't feel the thrill of realizing a symbol resembles a Mycenaean potter's mark or a Cretan mountain name. That's why the future of decipherment isn't just silicon versus clay, it's a partnership. Researchers now use AI to flag promising leads, then apply cultural context, knowing, for instance, that certain glyphs clustered near depictions of olive oil in Minoan art might suggest trade records. The ultimate test may lie in history's most infamous puzzle, the Voynich manuscript. Cryptographers have thrown everything at it: frequency analysis, Markov chains, even medieval recipe books, yet its pages resist. Recently, AI proposed Hebrew as the source language, but the translations read like surreal poetry, leaving scholars divided. It's a humbling reminder. Some scripts guard their secrets not just with complexity, but with layers of lost context no algorithm can reconstruct. Perhaps the final breakthrough won't come from a single eureka, a moment, but from the quiet synergy of human curiosity and machine precision, slowly peeling back time's stubborn layers until the past finally speaks. There's a quiet frustration that haunts every scholar who studies undeciphered scripts, the gnawing realization that some mysteries might never be solved. Unlike the triumphant stories of the Rosetta Stone or Linear B, many ancient writing systems confront us with barriers no amount of ingenuity can fully breach. Take the Vinca symbols etched into pottery fragments found across the Balkans, dating back over 7,000 years. These marks, some resembling crosses, arrows, or branching lines, cluster in ways that suggest intentional communication. But with only a few hundred examples, most no longer than a handful of symbols, there's simply not enough data to determine if this was true writing, ritual notation, or something else entirely. It's like trying to reconstruct an entire language from a handful of torn-out dictionary pages. You might recognize a few words, but the grammar, the syntax, the soul of the language remains out of reach. The core challenge is what linguists call the cold start problem. To crack a script, you typically need three things: a sufficient volume of text, some understanding of the language it represents, and ideally, a bilingual reference. Lose any one of these and decipherment becomes a guessing game. The Indus Valley script, for instance, survives on thousands of seals and tablets, but the average inscription is just 5 symbols long. Without longer passages, scholars can't track how words combine or how sentences form, leaving them stranded in a sea of isolated glyphs. Even worse is the case of Rongo-Rongo, where the surviving tablets might not even represent the script's full complexity. If Easter Island scribes also wrote on perishable materials like bark cloth or palm leaves, the most revealing texts could have rotted away centuries ago, leaving behind only the most durable fragments as cryptic clues. Then there's the problem of linguistic isolation. Some scripts, like Proto-Elamite, appear to encode languages with no known relatives, linguistic orphans, cut off from any family tree. Without a descendant or sister language to compare against, every attempt at translation is like navigating without a compass. Imagine encountering a sentence in Basque, a language unrelated to any other in Europe, with no dictionary or grammar guide. Now multiply that difficulty by millennia of linguistic drift, and you begin to grasp why certain scripts resist interpretation. The Meroitic script of ancient Nubia, for example, was partially deciphered because scholars could tie it to modern Nubian languages. But for scripts like Vinca or the markings on the Decipherable tablet in Greece, the underlying languages vanished without a trace, leaving behind only mute symbols. What does this mean for our understanding of history? The gaps are more than academic, they're cultural black holes, swallowing entire worldviews. A single deciphered shopping list from Mesopotamia can tell us about trade routes, prices, even social hierarchies. But an undeciphered script might hold poetry, laws, or scientific knowledge we'll never access. Consider the Isthmian script of ancient Mesoamerica, contemporary with early Maya writing. A handful of inscriptions survive, their symbols tantalizingly similar to Mayan glyphs, close enough to tease, but too distinct to translate. Could these stones record a rival kingdom's history or a lost religious tradition? Without a key, we're left with silence where there once might have been epic narratives. Scholars cope with these dead ends in surprising ways. Some turn to statistical analysis, mapping symbol frequencies to infer possible meanings. Others study the artifact's physical context, where they were found, what they were buried with, to guess at their purpose. A few even experiment with cognitive archaeology, reconstructing how ancient scribes might have thought based on tool marks or symbol evolution. And then there's the hardest lesson of all, accepting that some questions won't be answered. Historian Andrew Robinson calls this the humility of ignorance, the recognition that the past isn't a puzzle to be solved, but a landscape where some territories will always lie in shadow. Yet there's a strange beauty in these enduring mysteries. They remind us that history isn't a sealed book but a conversation, one where the other side sometimes speaks in whispers we strain to hear. Every undeciphered script is an invitation to keep looking, to stay curious, and to marvel at how much we've already recovered from the silence of centuries. After all, the next shovel strike or algorithm might yet uncover the key we've been missing. Until then, these unreadable texts stand as monuments to human ingenuity and to the vast, uncharted depths of our shared past. The story of writing isn't just about the scripts we've deciphered, it's also about the ones that vanished, taking entire worlds of knowledge with them. When a language fades, it's not just words that disappear, it's laws, songs, medical remedies, even ways of seeing the universe. Consider the Maya, whose intricate glyphs adorned temples and codices for centuries. By the time Spanish colonizers arrived in the 16th century, Maya scribes were producing books filled with astronomical calculations and historical records. But within decades, those texts were burned as part of a campaign to erase indigenous identity, leaving only 4 surviving pre-Columbian Maya codices. The suppression was so effective that by the 18th century, even descendants of the Maya had forgotten how to read their ancestors' writing. It's as if someone tore chapters from the Encyclopedia of Human History and tossed them into a fire. This cultural erasure wasn't unique to the Americas. Across the globe, from Africa to Siberia, colonial powers systematically dismantled indigenous writing systems, labeling them primitive or pagan. The Nsabidi script of southeastern Nigeria, used for centuries by secret societies to record laws and rituals, was pushed to the brink of extinction under British rule. In Siberia, the Tuvan people's ancient runic script was replaced by Cyrillic, severing a direct link to their nomadic past. These weren't just changes in alphabet, they were acts of cultural surgery, cutting people off from their own histories. Yet against all odds, some scripts have clawed their way back from oblivion. The Cherokee syllabary, invented by Sequoyah in the early 19th century, is a stunning example of resilience. At a time when the U.S. government was forcibly relocating Cherokee communities, Sequoia's 85-character system, created without formal literacy training, spread like wildfire. Within months, thousands of Cherokee were reading newspapers and writing letters in their own script. Today, it thrives on street signs, in schools, and even on smartphone keyboards. Similarly, the Maori in New Zealand have revived the use of their traditional script, combining it with digital tools to create a living, evolving written tradition. The stakes of these revivals go far beyond symbolism. When the Aramaic language, once the lingua franca of the Middle East, began to fade, so did access to centuries of Syriac Christian literature and Zoroastrian texts. Modern scholars now race to document endangered scripts before the last fluent speakers pass away, knowing that every untranslated manuscript is a potential Rosetta Stone for some future generation. In China, the Nushu script, used exclusively by women in Hunan province for centuries to write poetry and letters, was on the verge of extinction until researchers tracked down elderly practitioners in the 1980s. Their efforts preserved not just a writing system, but an entire tradition of female solidarity and artistic expression. What does it take to resurrect a lost script? Sometimes it's as simple as finding one determined individual. In the 1950s, a Nigerian teacher named Joseph Oju single-handedly revived the Zaghawa script of Sudan by teaching it to children under a tree, despite government opposition. Other efforts rely on technology. 3D scans can reconstruct damaged inscriptions, while machine learning helps reconstruct grammatical patterns from fragmentary texts. But the hardest part isn't decipherment, it's rebuilding the cultural ecosystem that gives writing meaning. A script isn't just symbols on a page, it's a living practice tied to rituals, daily life, and community identity. The most haunting question isn't just how much we've lost, but how much we never knew existed. For every Maya codex burned or Cherokee hymn book preserved, there are countless scripts that disappeared without a trace. The Rongo-Rongo of Easter Island, the mysterious symbols of the Vinca culture, the lost writing systems of the Picts, they whisper to us from the edges of history, reminders that every script is a thread in the tapestry of human thought. And while we can't recover what's been erased, we can choose which threads to strengthen today, ensuring that the next generation inherits more than just fragments of a forgotten past. Beneath the shifting sands of deserts and the tangled roots of ancient forests, secrets whisper to us, lost scripts waiting to be unearthed, each one a potential Rosetta Stone that could crack open civilizations we never knew existed. Consider this staggering fact. After centuries of excavation, archaeologists estimate less than 1% of the world's potential sites have been explored. That means 99% of human history still lies hidden, much of it inscribed with symbols we can't yet read. The jungles of Central America alone hold over 60,000 undocumented Maya structures, many likely adorned with undiscovered glyphs. Off the coast of India, the submerged city of Dwarka, said to be 5,000 years old, could harbor inscriptions linking the Indus Valley script to later writing systems. And deep in the Sahel, the ruins of forgotten African kingdoms like Ouagadougou might hide administrative records in scripts that predate Arabic influences. The most tantalizing possibilities lie where we least expect them. Take the Amazon, long dismissed as a primitive wilderness until laser mapping revealed vast, ancient cities beneath the canopy. Could their inhabitants have developed a form of writing on perishable materials like bark or fruit skins, now lost to humidity? Or consider the Mediterranean's sunken ports, where Phoenician trading ships may have carried tablets inscribed with variations of their alphabet, the ancestor of nearly every Western script. Even familiar sights hold surprises. In Egypt's Valley of the Kings, ground-penetrating radar recently detected hidden chambers near Tutankhamun's tomb. What if they contain papyri in a script older than hieroglyphs? Technologies once deemed science fiction are turning these dreams into plausible missions. Hyperspectral imaging can detect faded ink invisible to the naked eye, while AI combs satellite photos for geometric patterns hinting at buried structures. In 2023, researchers using muon tomography, a cosmic ray scanning technique, discovered a hidden corridor in the Great Pyramid. If such methods were applied to sealed caves or unexcavated mounds, who knows what linguistic treasures might emerge? The legendary Library of Pergamum, said to hold 200,000 scrolls, could still lie beneath Turkish soil. A single intact codex from its collection might rewrite the history of Anatolian languages. But the greatest prize wouldn't necessarily be a grand inscription. It could be something as humble as a merchant's ledger or a child's writing exercise. When archaeologists deciphered Ugaritic, a Bronze Age script from Syria, it wasn't through royal proclamations but mundane lists of farm animals and recipes. These everyday texts revealed more about ancient life than any monument ever could. Imagine stumbling upon a similar trove in the ruins of Tartessos, Spain's enigmatic pre-Roman civilization, whose mysterious symbols resemble a mix of Phoenician and local signs. Or uncovering a cache of Olmec tablets in Mexico, potentially proving they developed writing centuries before the Maya. The thrill isn't just in discovery, it's in the domino effect each new script triggers. Finding a bilingual Etruscan text, for instance, could finally unlock this Italian civilization's language, shedding light on their influence over early Rome. A single inscription linking the Rongo-Rongo of Easter Island to Polynesian navigation chants might reveal how settlers crossed thousands of ocean miles. Even fragments matter. In 2021, a pottery shard from Israel bearing 2 lines of Proto-Canaanite letters pushed back the birth of the alphabet by a century. Who's to say the next broken jar or cave wall won't append another scholarly assumption? What keeps archaeologists awake at night isn't the fear that these scripts don't exist, it's the certainty that they do, silently eroding in acidic soil or crumbling under urban sprawl. Every bulldozer clearing land for a highway, every looted tomb, represents potential knowledge lost forever. Yet for every tragedy, there's hope in places like the caves of Dunhuang, where a single hidden library preserved 50,000 manuscripts for a millennium, or the Villa of the Papyri in Herculaneum, where advanced imaging is slowly revealing Greek philosophical texts carbonized by volcanic ash. The next great decipherment might already be buried in a museum basement, mislabeled as decorative marks on a forgotten artifact. The search for undiscovered scripts isn't just academic, it's a race against time to recover voices the past never intended to lose. With each passing monsoons, each wave eroding coastal ruins, the window narrows. But somewhere out there, beneath desert dunes or jungle vines, a tablet waits, one that could make us rethink everything we know about the origins of law, poetry, or even the human mind itself. All it takes is one stroke of luck, one curious explorer's trowel striking clay to shatter the silence of millennia. Writing doesn't just record language, it shapes who we are. The moment a society develops its own script, something profound happens. It begins to think differently. Take the Phoenicians, those seafaring traders who roamed the Mediterranean over 3,000 years ago. Their alphabet, with its simple, consonant-based symbols, wasn't just practical, it was revolutionary. Unlike the complex hieroglyphs of Egypt or the wedges of Cuneiform, the Phoenician script was lean, adaptable, and easy to learn. This wasn't just a tool for merchants, it was a cultural weapon. As their ships carried goods from Tyre to Carthage, they also carried something far more enduring: the seeds of written communication that would sprout into the Greek, Latin, and even Arabic alphabets. The Phoenicians didn't just trade purple dye and glass, they traded the very building blocks of how future civilizations would express themselves. But writing systems aren't just about efficiency, they're mirrors of the cultures that create them. Contrast the Phoenician alphabet with Rongo-Rongo, the enigmatic script of Easter Island. Isolated in the vast Pacific, the Rapa Nui people developed a writing system unlike any other. Its glyphs curling like ocean waves in reverse boustrophedan lines snaking back and forth like a plow turning soil. This wasn't just a way to record taxes or treaties, it was a sacred act tied to rituals and chants. Where the Phoenician script spread like wildfire, Rongo-Rongo remained fiercely local, a whispered conversation between an island and its people. The symbols themselves, birdmen, palms, fishhooks, reflect a world bounded by the sea, where navigation and survival were woven into the very act of writing. The power dynamics of scripts reveal even deeper truths. When the Romans imposed Latin across their empire, they weren't just replacing words, they were reshaping identities. Local languages like Gaulish or Etruscan faded, not because they were inferior, but because the script that carried them was pushed aside. Conversely, when Korea's King Sejong invented Hangul in the 15th century, he did it to empower commoners who struggled with Chinese characters. The elegance of Hangul, its letters mimicking the shape of the mouth when speaking, wasn't just linguistic genius, it was a democratization of knowledge. Suddenly, literacy wasn't reserved for elites who could memorize thousands of characters. Scripts, in this light, aren't neutral tools, they're battlegrounds for cultural survival. What's most striking is how writing systems encode worldview. Chinese characters, with their pictographic roots, carry layers of meaning in a single glyph. The character for peace, Chinese letter, shows a woman under a roof, intertwining domesticity and safety. Meanwhile, the angular runes of Scandinavia weren't just letters. They were believed to hold magic, carved into amulets to ward off curses. Even the direction of writing whispers clues. Arabic's right-to-left flow reflects its scribes' reed pens, which smudged if dragged leftward, while Mayan glyphs could be read top to bottom or in zigzags, mirroring the cyclical time they celebrated. The loss of a script, then, isn't just a linguistic tragedy, it's the erasure of a way of seeing. When the Spanish burned Maya codices, they didn't just destroy books, they severed a connection to how the Maya mapped the stars or tracked time. Today, as scholars race to revive scripts like Nushu, a secret writing used by Chinese women to share stories forbidden by patriarchy, they're not just preserving symbols. They're reclaiming voices that refuse to be silenced. Every undeciphered tablet, every half-understood inscription is a reminder. Writing isn't just about what we say, but who we are and who we might yet become. Forgery has haunted the study of ancient scripts like a shadow, twisting history into puzzles no one was meant to solve. Take the infamous Fuente Magna bowl, a ceramic artifact discovered in Bolivia in the 1950s, covered in what appeared to be Sumerian cuneiform. The implications were staggering: proof of contact between Mesopotamia and South America thousands of years before Columbus, but the cracks in the story soon showed. The symbols were a jumble of authentic cuneiform signs arranged nonsensically, like someone had copied them from a textbook without understanding grammar. Even the bowl's material didn't match local pottery styles, yet for decades the artifact fueled wild theories, diverting attention from genuine discoveries. Then there's the Bat Creek stone, unearthed in Tennessee in the 1880s, bearing markings that some claimed were Paleo-Hebrew. If real, it would rewrite the history of pre-Columbian America. But scholars quickly spotted the red flags. The inscription was backwards, as if someone had traced it from a printed source without realizing Hebrew reads right to left. The soil around the stone didn't match the excavation layer it was supposedly found in, and the carvings showed fresh tool marks under magnification. Still, the stone persists in fringe literature, a testament to how tenaciously forgeries cling to the edges of academia. Why do fakes proliferate? The answer lies in the intoxicating blend of greed and longing. Forgers prey on our hunger for lost connections between continents, cultures, or even civilizations and the divine. The 19th century was rife with discoveries like the Davenport Tablets, purportedly covered in a mix of Egyptian and Native American symbols, created to prove that mound builders were a lost white race. These weren't just pranks, they were weapons crafted to reinforce colonial myths and erase indigenous histories. Even today, the lure of rewriting history drives a black market for bogus artifacts, from Viking runestones in Minnesota to ancient Slavic wooden calendars. Detecting fakes requires a forensic eye. Experts scrutinize everything from patina, the natural aging of surfaces, to the tools used. Authentic ancient inscriptions show where patterns consistent with the era's technology. A bronze chisel leaves different marks than a modern steel blade. Linguists analyze grammatical structures, knowing that forgers often mimic symbols but fail to replicate syntax. Radiocarbon dating can expose anachronistic materials, while ultraviolet light reveals modern adhesives or pigments. Sometimes the slip-ups are comically obvious. One notorious Phoenician inscription from Brazil included a letter that wasn't invented until centuries after Phoenician died out. But the damage isn't just academic. Every high-profile forgery fuels skepticism about genuine artifacts, making it harder for real breakthroughs to gain traction. When the so-called glosal tablets surfaced in France in the 1920s, their bizarre mix of symbols sparked a media frenzy and a backlash that tarred legitimate finds with the same brush of doubt. Worse, forgeries can derail research for generations. The Voynich manuscript's authenticity was questioned for decades because of its resemblance to Renaissance-era hoaxes, delaying serious study. Yet there's a twist. Some forgeries accidentally become historical artifacts in their own right. The infamous Shapira strips, 19th-century leather scrolls peddled as ancient Hebrew texts, were dismissed as fakes. But recent analysis suggests they might be medieval Kabbalistic creations, making them valuable relics of a different era. Even deliberate deceptions can reveal truths about the biases of their time, the skill of their makers, or the desperation to fill gaps in our understanding. The line between fraud and artifact isn't always clear, and that ambiguity is what keeps both scholars and forgers endlessly fascinated. In the end, the battle against fakes isn't just about protecting the past, it's about preserving the integrity of curiosity itself. Every time a hoax collapses under scrutiny, it's a reminder that real history doesn't need embellishment, it's strange enough on its own. The truth may be harder to find, but it's always more extraordinary than fiction. Long before symbols were pressed into clay or carved onto stone, history lived in breath and memory. For cultures like the Aboriginal Australians, knowledge wasn't locked away in libraries, it flowed through songlines, intricate oral maps woven into stories and chants that could guide travelers across thousands of miles. These weren't just tales, they were living encyclopedias, encoding everything from navigation routes to ecological wisdom, passed down unbroken for over 60,000 years. Compare that to the oldest written records, which stretch back a mere 5 millennia. The difference isn't just about time, it's about how each system shapes what gets preserved and whose voices endure. Writing introduced something radical: permanence. A cuneiform tablet from Sumer or a papyrus from Thebes could outlast its creator by centuries, carrying facts and fictions alike into futures the author never imagined. But that permanence came at a cost. Oral traditions thrive on adaptability. Each retelling adjusts to new contexts, pruning outdated details while preserving core truths. Writing freezes a single version, privileging the perspective of whoever held the stylus. Think of the Epic of Gilgamesh. What began as oral poetry across Mesopotamian campfires was eventually captured in clay by scribes whose patrons were kings. The result, a narrative that celebrates monumental architecture and royal glory, while the everyday voices of shepherds or potters fade into silence. The bias runs deeper than just content. Writing demands infrastructure, schools to teach it, materials to record it, institutions to preserve it. This inherently centralizes power. The ancient Maya, for instance, reserved hieroglyphs largely for elites, inscribing their temples with conquests and bloodlines while marketplace haggling or children's lullabies went unrecorded. Contrast this with the indigenous traditions of the Pacific Northwest, where potlatch ceremonies wove history, law, and kinship into spoken performances open to all. Without a written record, colonial authorities later dismissed these as mere ritual, failing to recognize them as sophisticated systems of governance and memory. Yet writing's greatest illusion might be its veneer of objectivity. A tax receipt from Babylon feels incontrovertible until you realize it only notes what the bureaucracy deemed worth counting. Oral cultures, by necessity, prioritize what's vital to collective survival, which plants heal where water hides in drought, how to read seasonal stars. When the Timbisha Shoshone recite ancestral songs describing ancient lakes in Death Valley, they're not just preserving poetry, they're maintaining climatic records that modern science later verified. Meanwhile, the first written histories often mythologize rulers while reducing famines or plagues to footnotes. The collision between these systems isn't just academic, it's etched in blood. Colonial powers routinely weaponized literacy, dismissing oral cultures as prehistoric to justify land seizures. Australia's terra nullius doctrine, which declared the continent empty because Aboriginal societies lacked writing, ignored sophisticated songlines that mapped every dune and creek. Similarly, when Spanish friars burned Maya codices as devil's work, they didn't just destroy books, they severed a civilization from its own intellectual heritage. The irony, many of these suppressed cultures had oral histories accurately recounting events from 10,000 years ago, like volcanic eruptions or coastal drownings, later confirmed by geology. Today, technology is blurring these ancient divides. Projects like the Living Archive of Aboriginal Languages digitize oral histories alongside written texts, while apps teach Cherokee syllabary through interactive storytelling. The goal isn't to crown one system superior, but to recognize how each illuminates blind spots in the other. After all, the Rosetta Stone was only deciphered because someone thought to carve the same message in two scripts and a spoken language. Perhaps the future of history lies not in choosing between voice and ink, but in learning to listen to both before the last keepers of unwritten tongues take their memories where no script can follow. Deep in the wetlands of China's Henan province, archaeologists unearthed tortoise shells dating back 9,000 years, each etched with strange, deliberate markings that look eerily like later Chinese characters. Are these the earliest seeds of writing or just ritual doodles? The Jiahu symbols, as they're known, ignite one of archaeology's fiercest debates. Where do we draw the line between meaningful communication and abstract decoration? Unlike later oracle bones with clear linguistic patterns, these ancient scratches resist easy classification. Some signs resemble numerals, while others might depict natural phenomena, a far cry from the structured scripts of Mesopotamia or Egypt. Yet their repetition across shells hints at intentionality, as if the carvers were following some unspoken code. Half a world away, the Tartaria tablets of Romania add fuel to the fire. These palm-sized clay discs, stamped with spirals and stick figures, predate Sumerian cuneiform by over a millennium. At first glance, they could pass as prehistoric pottery designs. But the symbols cluster in ways that suggest syntax like a sentence waiting to be read. The problem, without longer texts or cultural context, they might just as easily be clan markings or ritual objects. This is the heart of the proto-writing dilemma. When does a symbol stop being a picture and start being a word? Linguists use strict criteria to separate true writing from its precursors. A full writing system must represent specific words or sounds, not just general ideas. It needs grammar, rules for combining symbols, and the capacity to express any thought, not just inventory lists. Proto-writing, by contrast, is more limited. Tally marks for sheep, ownership symbols on pots, or ritual signs like the Vinca symbols of the Balkans. These communicate, but not with the flexibility of true scripts. The Jiahu and Tartaria finds hover in this gray zone, teetering between simple notation and something far more complex. What's at stake isn't just academic labeling, it's our understanding of how human cognition evolved. If these markings are proto-writing, they suggest that the impulse to record language emerged independently across continents, long before the first official inventions of writing. But if they're true scripts, history's timeline needs rewriting. Imagine discovering that a culture in Neolithic China or Old Europe cracked the code of writing millennia earlier than believed, only for that knowledge to vanish without a trace. The implications would upend everything we know about the spread of ideas in the ancient world. The debate also forces us to confront our biases. Why do we readily accept cuneiform as real writing but hesitate over Tartaria's spirals? Partly because Mesopotamia left behind thousands of tablets with clear administrative purposes, while isolated finds like Jaya who lack that volume. But what if these enigmatic symbols represent a different path, one where writing began as sacred rather than practical? Some scholars argue the first marks weren't for counting grain but for speaking to gods, like the Naxi pictographs of southwest China, still used by shamans today. Technology offers new ways to probe these mysteries. Microscopic analysis of the Jiahu shells reveals the order in which lines were carved, hinting at standardized strokes. Statistical models applied to Tartaria's symbols detect repeating pairs that might encode names or titles. Yet even with these tools, the answer may remain elusive. Writing isn't a light switch that flips on, it's a spectrum, with cultures inching toward complexity at different speeds. The real lesson of these borderline cases isn't about categorization. It's about the boundless creativity of human expression and the quiet revolutions that might have flickered in the darkness long before history's so-called first scripts took hold. The race to decipher the past is entering uncharted territory, armed with tools that would have seemed like science fiction just decades ago. Imagine holding a fragile clay tablet, its surface worn smooth by millennia. Now picture that same tablet scanned in 3 dimensions, its faintest grooves magnified and analyzed by algorithms trained to spot patterns invisible to the human eye. This isn't hypothetical. Projects like the Cuneiform Digital Library Initiative are doing exactly that, using high-resolution scans to reconstruct broken fragments virtually, piecing together texts like digital jigsaws. Meanwhile, reflectance transformation imaging captures inscriptions under raking light, revealing strokes erased by time. The result, symbols once considered illegible are springing back to life, whispering secrets across the centuries. But technology alone isn't the answer. It's the collaboration between disciplines that's rewriting the rules. Linguists now work alongside astrophysicists applying galaxy mapping algorithms to trace how glyphs evolved across regions. Chemists analyze ink residues to date manuscripts without damaging them, while computational biologists borrow DNA sequencing techniques to model how languages branch and change. The most promising breakthroughs come from these unexpected intersections. Take the work at the University of Chicago, where AI trained on thousands of Mesopotamian business tablets began predicting missing words with eerie accuracy, exposing previously unnoticed formulaic patterns in administrative texts. Suddenly, dry records of grain shipments became windows into the rhythm of daily life. The real game changer, though, might be the power of the crowd. Platforms like Zooniverse enlist thousands of volunteers to transcribe fragments of Oxyrhynchus papyri, a treasure trove of Greek texts unearthed from Egyptian rubbish heaps. What once took scholars lifetimes to catalog now happens in months, as amateur sleuths flag recurring symbols or spot connections professionals might miss. This collective approach is breathing new life into stalled decipherments. The Phaistos disk, a mysterious clay circle stamped with spiraling symbols found in Crete, has stumped experts for over a century. Now, open-source databases allow researchers worldwide to test theories against a growing web of comparative scripts, from Linear A to Cypriot syllabary. So which script will likely fall next? Proto-Elamite is a strong contender. With its mix of numerical and symbolic notation, it's ripe for AI pattern recognition, especially as new imaging techniques uncover hidden markings on long-studied tablets. Rongo-Rongo, too, stands at a tipping point. Statistical analysis suggests its glyphs encode a Polynesian language, and with surviving speakers of related tongues still preserving oral traditions, a linguistic Rosetta Stone may yet emerge. But the dark horse could be the Indus Valley script. Recent machine learning models have identified potential syntactic structures in its brief inscriptions, and if excavations ever unearth a longer text, say, a merchant's ledger or a royal decree, the floodgates could open overnight. The future of decipherment isn't just about solving puzzles. It's about rebuilding bridges to lost worlds. Every script cracked is a chorus of voices restored, not just kings and priests, but farmers, poets, children scratching practice letters. With each technological leap, we're not just reading history, we're relearning how to listen. There's something irresistible about a locked door, especially when that door was sealed centuries ago, its key lost to time. Ancient scripts tap into that same primal curiosity, whispering promises of hidden knowledge and untold stories. Think of the global frenzy over Dan Brown's The Lost Symbol, where fictional codes buried in Washington's monuments sent readers scrambling for history books. Or the viral TikTok deep dives into the Voynich manuscript, where armchair detectives dissect plant illustrations with the intensity of forensic scientists. This isn't just niche hobbyism, it's a cultural obsession that spans bestseller lists, blockbuster films, and late-night rabbit holes. But why? What is it about these cryptic symbols that grips us so tightly? Part of the allure is the sheer thrill of the puzzle. Humans are pattern-seeking creatures wired to solve riddles and crack codes. Ancient scripts offer the ultimate challenge, a game where the rules are unknown and the stakes are history itself. It's no coincidence that the same minds drawn to crossword championships or escape rooms lose sleep over Linear A's swirling glyphs. Every undeciphered script is a high-stakes mystery, daring us to outthink the centuries. When amateur linguists pore over Indus Valley seals or debate Rongo-Rongo's celestial charts, they're joining a tradition that stretches back to Champollion and Ventris, ordinary people chasing extraordinary breakthroughs. Yet there's more to it than intellectual sport. These scripts are portals to lost worlds, offering glimpses of civilizations that shaped our own but vanished without a trace. The Minoans of Crete, with their bull-leaping frescoes and labyrinthine palaces, feel tantalizingly close when we stare at linear tablets. Yet without the words to tell their stories, they remain just out of reach, like a song played on a muted instrument. This tension between knowing and not knowing fuels a romantic longing for connection across time. We see ourselves in those ancient scribes pressing reeds into clay or carving bone and wonder, what would they think of our world? What secrets might they share if we could only listen? Beneath the surface, though, lies something even more profound, a fear of forgetting. Every undeciphered script is a mirror reflecting our own fragility. If a civilization as advanced as the Maya could have their codices burned, their history rewritten by outsiders, what does that mean for us? In an age of digital decay, where file formats obsolete in decades, the endurance of Cuneiform tablets feels like a rebuke. These scripts remind us that knowledge is never permanent, it's only as sturdy as the systems we build to preserve it. The rush to decode them isn't just about the past. It's a subconscious race to safeguard our own legacy before it, too, slips into silence. And then there's the tantalizing what if. What if the Indus Valley script reveals an ancient democracy predating Greece? What if Rongo-Rongo holds Polynesian star charts accurate enough to guide voyages we thought impossible? The gaps in our understanding aren't just voids, they're spaces where imagination and history collide. Pop culture knows this well, from Indiana Jones raiding temples for mystical glyphs to a rival's linguists decoding alien circles. Stories about deciphering scripts always hinge on transformation. The moment the characters crack the code, their world changes. That's the unspoken promise drawing us in. Perhaps if we solve the puzzle, our world will change too. Ultimately, our obsession with ancient scripts is a conversation with the past, with each other, and with the versions of ourselves that still believe in magic. Every shared theory, every heated debate over a glyph's meaning, is a testament to the human need to make sense of the unknown. The next time you fall down a Wikipedia hole about Proto-Elamite or sketch Voynich symbols in a notebook, remember, you're not just chasing answers. You're keeping alive the oldest human tradition of all, the refusal to let stories fade without a fight. The Rosetta Stone sits in the British Museum, gleaming under soft lights, surrounded by visitors snapping photos, but just beyond the glass a quiet battle rages. This slab of black basalt, the key to deciphering hieroglyphs, was seized by British forces from French troops in Egypt in 1801. And it's never left London since. For Egypt, its absence is an open wound, a symbol of colonial plunder. For the museum, it's a cornerstone of universal heritage, accessible to all. This clash isn't just about one artifact, it's about who gets to claim the voices of the past and who decides what they mean. The debate over ancient scripts is part of a seismic shift in archaeology, a reckoning with the field's colonial roots. When European explorers hauled away cuneiform tablets from Mesopotamia or Maya codices from Central America, they weren't just collecting relics, they were stripping communities of their histories. Today, descendants of those civilizations are demanding a say in how these texts are studied and displayed. Take the case of the Benin bronzes, intricately inscribed with Edo script. After decades in European museums, they're finally returning to Nigeria, setting a precedent that could ripple through the world of ancient writing. But what about scripts like Linear A, tied to cultures with no direct modern descendants? Who speaks for them? Museums often argue that their role is preservation. The British Museum claims humidity and political instability in Egypt could damage the Rosetta Stone, a stance critics call paternalistic. Meanwhile, the Louvre collaborates with Egyptian scholars to study hieroglyphs, sharing scans and hosting joint exhibitions. This middle path, repatriation through digital access and partnerships, offers a potential compromise, but it doesn't satisfy those who view physical return as non-negotiable justice. The irony is palpable. The very institutions that deciphered these scripts now face demands to relinquish control over their interpretation. Beyond ownership lies a deeper question: who gets to write the narrative? For centuries, Western scholars framed ancient scripts through a Eurocentric lens, portraying Mesopotamia as the cradle of civilization, while marginalizing equally sophisticated systems like the quipu knots of the Inca or the Entsibidi symbols of West Africa. Decolonizing archaeology means not just returning artifacts but dismantling these hierarchies of knowledge. When indigenous researchers lead the study of their ancestors' writing, like Maori scholars revitalizing the once suppressed script of their people, the translations shift. A glyph isn't just a linguistic puzzle, it's a vessel for worldview, spirituality, and resistance. The legal landscape is shifting too. UNESCO treaties now recognize cultural patrimony laws, but enforcement is patchy. Auction houses still sell looted tablets, and private collectors hoard scripts that could rewrite history. Even when artifacts stay put, access isn't equal. A farmer in rural Peru might never see the quipu chords his ancestors crafted, locked away in a foreign archive. Some argue for a radical solution: digitize everything, making high-resolution scans freely available worldwide. But pixels can't replace the aura of holding a 4,000-year-old tablet, feeling the grooves left by a scribe's hand. At its heart, this isn't just about the past, it's about who shapes the future. When a child in Cairo visits a replica Rosetta Stone in the new Grand Egyptian Museum, they're not just learning hieroglyphs, they're reclaiming a lineage interrupted by colonial theft. Conversely, when a student in London studies the same stone, they inherit a legacy of extraction. Perhaps the answer isn't binary. Maybe it lies in shared stewardship, where institutions become bridges rather than vaults, and ancient scripts are seen not as trophies but as living conversations, ones that belong ultimately to humanity itself. The real test will be whether we can listen to those voices without drowning them out with our own agendas. Ancient scripts whisper to us across millennia, not just as relics of forgotten empires, but as mirrors reflecting the same struggles we face today. The Cuneiform Tablets of Mesopotamia weren't just receipts for grain, they were experiments in encoding human thought, much like our modern-day emojis. Think about it, a Babylonian merchant used wedge-shaped symbols to say, "Pay me 10 barrels of wheat," while today you might text a money bag emoji followed by a wheat sheaf. The tools have changed, but the impulse remains identical: to convey complex ideas quickly across barriers of time and space. Take the Egyptian hieroglyphs, a system so elaborate it required years of training to master. Only scribes and priests could wield its power, much like how coding languages today gatekeep access to digital platforms. The irony: hieroglyphs eventually streamlined into Demotic script, then Coptic, shedding complexity for accessibility, just as programming languages evolved to be more user-friendly. History shows us that writing systems don't just communicate, they adapt or die. The Phoenician alphabet thrived because it was lean and portable, perfect for traders moving between ports. Sound familiar? It's the same reason texting shorthand dominates our screens' efficiency wins. Yet the most poignant lesson lies in what these scripts preserved. The Epic of Gilgamesh, etched in cuneiform, grapples with mortality and friendship themes as relevant now as in ancient Uruk. Maya glyphs track celestial cycles with precision rivaling modern astronomy, proving that humanity's obsession with time and the cosmos transcends eras. Even the humble tally marks on Neolithic bones reveal a universal truth. We've always sought to quantify our world, whether counting sheep or tracking steps on a smartwatch. The real twist: some ancient solutions are resurfacing. Emojis, often dismissed as frivolous, function like modern-day logograms, picture symbols representing whole words or ideas, just like hieroglyphs. Digital stickers in messaging apps echo the seal impressions of Indus Valley merchants, who stamped clay with unicorn motifs as signatures, and the rise of audio messages. That's a return to oral tradition, where tone and nuance carry meaning beyond static text. Perhaps the most urgent warning from lost languages is the fragility of knowledge. The Library of Alexandria burned, taking countless scrolls with it. Today, file formats become unreadable within decades. The Minoans left linear are undeciphered because their civilization collapsed before passing the key to posterity. In an age of digital decay and information overload, their silence screams a question: what are we leaving behind that future generations won't understand? The answer isn't just in better storage, it's in designing systems that endure. Just as the simplest alphabets outlasted the most ornate scripts, so the next time you send a heart emoji or curse autocorrect, remember, you're part of an unbroken chain. From Sumerian accountants to TikTok creators, we're all scribes, shaping symbols to bridge the gap between what we think and what others hear. The mediums change, but the mission stays the same: to make sure our voices, whether etched in clay or floating in the cloud, never truly disappear. The quest to decipher ancient scripts isn't just about solving puzzles, it's about recovering lost chapters of the human story. Every time a script like Linear B or Egyptian hieroglyphs is cracked, it's as if a doorway swings open, revealing voices we thought had been silenced forever. These aren't just words on clay or stone, they're the laughter of scribes, the prayers of priests, the ledgers of merchants who walked dusty streets thousands of years before us. The thrill of decipherment isn't in proving how clever we are, it's in the humbling realization that our ancestors were just as complex, just as human as we are today. Yet for every script we've decoded, there are dozens still guarding their secrets. Take Rongo-Rongo, the enigmatic glyphs of Easter Island. What if they hold Polynesian navigational knowledge far more advanced than we've imagined? Or consider the Indus Valley symbols. Could they reveal an egalitarian society that thrived without kings or wars? These aren't idle questions. Each undeciphered script is a missing piece in the mosaic of human history, a blank space where entire cultures might have flourished unnoticed. The frustration of not knowing is part of what drives scholars to keep digging, scanning, and theorizing. It's not just academic curiosity, it's the sense that we're standing on the edge of a cliff, peering into the fog, knowing there's something extraordinary just out of sight. Technology is reshaping the hunt in ways Champollion or Ventris could never have dreamed. Artificial intelligence now pores over Proto-Elamite tablets, spotting patterns no human eye could detect. High-resolution imaging pulls faded ink back from oblivion, while crowdsourced projects enlist thousands of volunteers to transcribe fragments of Oxyrhynchus papyri. The next Rosetta Stone might not be a physical object at all. It could be an algorithm, a statistical model, or a chance discovery in a forgotten archive. But here's the beautiful paradox: even as our tools grow more advanced, decipherment still hinges on those fleeting sparks of human insight. Michael Ventris cracked Linear B not just by crunching data, but by asking, what if this isn't Minoan at all? The best codebreakers are part mathematician, part poet, willing to chase hunches as much as hard evidence. What keeps this quest alive, ultimately, is the stories waiting to be told. Imagine uncovering a tablet that reveals the Minoan creation myth, or a Rongo-Rongo chant describing how Polynesian voyagers navigated by the stars. These wouldn't just be historical footnotes, they'd reshape our understanding of human ingenuity. When the Maya script was finally deciphered in the late 20th century, it appended centuries of assumptions about their civilization, exposing a world of warring city-states and sophisticated astronomy. Who knows what other misconceptions we're clinging to because we haven't yet heard the other side of the story. The most profound lesson of these ancient scripts isn't about the past, it's about the future. They remind us that writing isn't just a tool, it's an act of faith. Every time a scribe pressed a stylus into clay or carved glyphs into wood, they were betting against time, trusting that someone someday would understand. That's why decipherment matters. It's not just about filling in history's gaps, it's about honoring that trust, proving that no voice is ever truly lost if we're willing to listen. So what's next? Maybe AI will crack Proto-Elamite by spotting a hidden numerical pattern. Maybe a storm will expose a cave in Crete filled with linear A tablets. Or maybe, just maybe, the key to Rongo-Rongo is sitting unnoticed in some museum drawer, waiting for the right pair of eyes to see it differently. The only certainty is this: the story isn't over. If these ancient scripts teach us anything, it's that humanity's greatest works aren't pyramids or empires, they're the marks we leave behind, however small, whispering across the centuries we were here. If you've ever felt the pull of a mystery, the itch to solve a riddle, you're part of this story too. Hit like if you're rooting for the next big breakthrough, subscribe to join the hunt, and drop a comment below. Which script do you think will fall next? The answer might be closer than